Um, was this project a calling for you? You know, when you have people who say the Lord called them to preach, was the Lord calling you to make this film, to tell this story?
That is a wonderful question. And the answer, I believe, is absolutely. It's funny you ask it even in that way because I feel like when I think about this film, it wasn't about me trying to make a film for my career. Honestly, I just felt like God was calling me to do it, which is why I stepped away from the business as an actor. With things happening in the community at that time, and even now, 2016, I felt like I had to do something with my art to show that I wasn't being silent. Nina Simone has this quote where she says, "The artist's job is to reflect the times," and I wanted to create something that was a reflection of how I felt about what I was seeing in my community.
When did you first come across his story?
I was an adult. I want to say I was 21, which is ironic because I grew up about 42 miles east of Southampton County in Norfolk, Virginia. And nowhere in my teaching did I learn about this American hero. So when I learned about him as an adult, he quickly became my hero. And I sought to walk in his shoes with respect to my faith and the way that I approach the world and injustice in the world. So naturally, when I became a filmmaker, I said, if there's any story I want to tell, it's the Braveheart-like story of Nat Turner.
Now, even though it's rated R, I consider it the PG version of what actually happened during slavery, because you only can show so much, and before people just have to get up and walk out. What was some of the things that you had to cut, that you had to leave out of the story, or even not even put on film, so to speak, that hopefully would encourage people to go and read it themselves?
Wow, another amazing question. When we think about the things that didn't make the cut or the things that were in the script in the 170-page version that didn't get shot, there was so much. If I had 10,000 pages, I'm not sure how much of the surface I could even scratch with the things that our ancestors had to endure. Breeding camps. The fact that when the United States passed laws that blocked more enslaved people coming into America from the Middle Passage, the fact that they started to breed the slaves they had, the fact that the enslavers began to impregnate their slaves to expand their property, the fact that laws were changed so any baby or any child that was a result of an enslaver and the enslaved would take on the lineage of the mother rather than the father. All these things happened in America. And so, in my original extended, unabridged version, there were a lot of things that didn't make it, just because I wanted to be clear that I wasn't doing something because of shock value, but I was actually feeding the narrative of this story and being honest and true to the ancestry and ambitions of Nat Turner.
How long was that process to get it from page to final cut?
I'm in my 8th year with the project, so it's taken a very long time to get it from concept to actually sitting here in front of you. And to be completely honest, carrying something for 8 years and finally having it done, presenting it to the world, it's a bit daunting because when I'm done, I have to move on.
And put yourself in the place of Nat Turner. All right, Nate Parker. What does he do? Does he lead a revolt? Does he escape? Does he just try and deal with the circumstances? What do you think you would have done back in that situation? And not necessarily in his shoes, but having been a slave yourself.
Well, I think that when I consider the question, what would I do had I been Nat Turner in 1831? I think that we can't really grapple with that question without trying to dissect what Nat Turner's ambitions were. See, the interesting thing was his liberation came through the very tool they used to make him docile, and that was the Bible. So if someone is to be Christ-like, if someone is to look at the Bible as a manual, then at some point they're going to have to come to grips with that, the fact that God is on the side of the oppressed, and that he has countless times in the Bible delivered the people that are being oppressed by oppressors. Nat Turner saw that, so he asked the Lord how he might further extend that narrative of standing in the gap of the oppressed and doing so in the name of God. So had I been back then, I I'd like to imagine that one, I would have had access to Africa as a source, as he did through his mother and grandmother, and two, that I would have sought to be more Christ-like through my interactions with the Bible, and really trying to look to the Bible for answers. And had I done that as Nat Turner did, I think I may also have explored ways to resist and to sacrifice on behalf of those who are suffering.
Now, how has this project changed you from where you were before you started doing the project till now? How has it changed you personally?
The project has changed me in so many ways. You know, I was forced to get closer to Nat Turner as a human being. I felt, you know, in the research, Nat Turner was never known to ever have a drink of alcohol. That was the first thing I gave up, and it's funny, I gave it up a couple years ago, and I haven't had a drink since. Not that I was, you know, dependent upon it, but you know, to get close to Nat Turner, I felt like I couldn't play around with his legacy. I had to really figure out what kind of sacrifices I could make, so my decisions, even in my acting, could be those that were as close to him as possible. You know, the way I spoke, the way I would preach, I wanted to feel like I was as close to him as possible. And I didn't want to feel like I had to click into something. I wanted to try to live it. Another thing that he was known to do is be in constant prayer and meditation. You know, so when I was trying, specifically when I was trying to raise the money and it kept falling through, I remember calling my grandmother. I was like, you know, I'm doing everything I think I can. You know, what else can I do? She said, you know, well, baby, have you fasted? And I was like, well, I haven't tried that, so I'm gonna try. And I started to fast and meditate, and you know, things start to happen, miracles start to happen. You know, and then the money came in a miraculous way, not from Hollywood, not from the places you think it would come from. And then before you know it, we're in production. But he is really, you know, just, you know, really diving into this project in the same way that some people get too close to the evil characters they play, and then things happen in their life that are an extension of that art or that proximity. The opposite has been true for me with respect to as I've connected closer and closer to Nat Turner. I'm just letting them stop.
Yeah.
I'm gonna finish. I'm just gonna. Hi, thank you. So as I've, you know, had an opportunity to get closer to Nat Turner, I feel like I was really able to demonstrate his ideals and his passions and desires for his people in the work that I was able to do.
People who knew you before the project and know you some years, have they seen a change in you? Have they mentioned, you know, I can see a little bit different after this project?
Some people have. You know, really, a couple of my friends came to the set when I was shooting, and they said it was as if they were looking at a different person. You know, that I was like plugged in a way, connected to something that was, it was hard for them to really separate me from. You know, go out to dinner and they couldn't really separate me from my Nat Turner connection, I guess.
Now, as Nate Parker, the filmmaker, actor, what do you want that brand to stand for? When people hear that name, whether it's directed or you're acting, what is it that you want people to know?
What I've always wanted people to know about, you know, me is that, you know, my art is a reflection of my activism. You know, every job that I've taken as an actor, you know, from a very young age, I've tried to tether myself to the progress of people that are oppressed, specifically people of African descent, in this country and across the diaspora. So, you know, any role that I felt denigrated people of color or separated us from our capacity, whether it be intellectual or otherwise, I've tried my very best to separate myself from those projects and to really attach myself to things that, you know, I can show to young people and say, this is a representation of who you are and who you can be and what was done before you and what you can achieve in the future. So, you know, with everything that I do, my hope is to elevate the oppressed out of oppression, like so many before me.
How do you turn it off? I mean, what do you do to relax once you know, stop thinking about the business or the next project or the project after that? How do you relax? What are some of the things you do?
Yeah, the main thing I do to relax, to kind of unplug from the business, is hanging out with my family. You know, I come from a very big family. You know, I have 4 younger sisters, and now as a father, I have 5 daughters. So everything that I do that is not in the work is about building emotional legacy with them. You know, emotional wealth and relational wealth with my kids. So when it's all said and done, and no one wants to give me an interview and no one wants to take pictures,